Fabric analysis is really pretty easy. Well, I'm going to show you. All right, now you should see a Paint Shop Pro screen with an Inkle loom. A lot of times in the Inkle group, people will ask, well, I want the pattern for that. The pattern for that is sitting right there. This is plain weave. There are 2 rows and I can see them clearly and beautifully in this picture. And I could go look up whose name it is. And I think she did a great job. If you can read the threads across both rows, you've got the pattern. This is how I used to teach my class how to do fabric analysis, because that was one of the things that over the years they thought that students should learn. Now we should be in presentation. So how do you do fabric analysis? This is what I did with them. I gave them a design, a drawdown. Start with the columns. Begin with the first column on the right. Might as well. You could begin on the left if you wanted. You could begin in the middle. I don't care. And that's why you can get a half a dozen different answers. You really can name whichever column you want, shaft 1. See shaft 1 written for column 1. So there it is in red.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at column 2. Is it the same as column 1? No, it changes. Make it something else. How about 2? Look at column 3. Is it the same as column 1 or 2?
No.
Nope. So it'll be 3. Look at the 4th thread here. Is it the same?
No.
For column 4. Okay, so now we have 4. And I gave them a hint because there were only 4 shafts up here, so they might know that it was going to be a 4-shaft draft. And if I'd have been really mean, I'd have put 8 or 10 on there.
Right.
But it was a beginning class. So that gets us our 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, I told them I'd done that. So you can guess that the draft only needs 4 shafts, but when you're actually starting with fabric, you don't know how many it's going to need.
Mm-hmm.
So look at column 5. Which of those columns does it match?
Column 2.
Yeah.
2. So you put a 2 there. Okay. So compare okay. So that's all there is to it. You can do the threading. If you have a drawdown, it's easy. Do the threading. Now go through and let's see, we just kept putting them in. And there are other possible correct answers, including 1 to 8, which is a nice way to think about it. And how do you get from here back to 1 to 8? That's a good reason to ask yourselves that. There's some really good reasons to ask yourself that, because that's the other part of how do I play with drafts? Can I go back and forth? So now we go to the treadling and we do the same process with the rows.
Mm-hmm.
And if this seems easy, I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. So the first one becomes 1 because we got to start somewhere. And we go down and we number them. And we come down and we find them. And that's our repeat. So now we're done. And there's our draft.
Okay.
Okay. That's all there is to it. Well, that isn't. Okay, so here's the hard part. I skipped my tie-up. So it's easy to get the threading and treadling. Now we have to do the work. We have to look at this treadle 1 and thread 1, whatever. Look at the first treadle and what threads are up.
Mm-hmm.
1 and 2.
The warp is dark, so it's 1 and 2, 2 and 1, 1 and 2, whatever. Okay, so it's 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And we look at 2. What's up?
2,
2,
3,
3.
2.
3.
Yeah. So just 2 and 3.
So it's just 2 and 3. And you go through and do that, and that's the hard part, is making sure that you lift them. And having a folded piece of paper to put over your grid can help you to find and see them. And make sure you get all of them. And so when you go through and do it, that's what you get, and you get this mess. The interesting thing about this draft was one of the textbooks that I used was The Complete Book of Drafting by Madeline Vanderhoot. And that's on the cover. But it's a plated twill on 4 shafts. That's pretty stinky. That's all there is to it. Now, how do you get the drawdown is the more difficult process. And for that, I have my trusty little pick glass that I love. And even when I was doing this a lot, I even had it in my purse most of the time. But I don't like to carry things anymore except on my walker. So it's just a little folded pick glass. But it does have 1 inch mark. It's an inch square.
Mm.
So you can count the threads in an inch, or you can see what the threading is. And even better, if you're going to do something with drafting, is Robin Spady introduced me to a digital microscope.
Mm.
And you just plug it into your computer, and now you don't even need to do that. They're wireless, but you just plug it into the computer, put the piece of fabric there, look at it and go, oh, I can magnify this 30 times and I can really read those threads and see what they're doing. And that's really true because while I showed you that inkle picture, not all fabric is that easy to see. I mean,
Right.
that's 2 rows, it's plain weave, it's color. You can really do that fast, but most of the things are much more difficult. Like, let's take this yucky dish towel. This is what happens with waffle weave and plain weave. I always love buying these towels and then washing them. They look so interesting, and then the waffle weave wrinkles and the plain weave doesn't, and you get that. So what is it? You know, how is it, and how can I look at it? And I would have been better off if I'd looked at it before I washed it. So you have to do these. When you want to do these, one way is if you can throw the fabric away, you can take a piece and pull 1 thread out at a time and see where it's over and under.
Okay.
And record that on your grid and do the next one and do the next one and do the next one until you've gotten a whole repeat. And that's actually easier than trying to do it in state. One of the things that I haven't done that I've started to do a couple of times is when we were in New Zealand, I bought my daughter, who was a Lord of the Rings fan, a scarf with the elf cloak shadow weave. It's really fun because it's got leaves in it. In the shadow weave is in a leaf format. So I was going to analyze that. I've never gotten around to it. And she won't let me cut her scarf up. I'm not about to cut it up because I bought it. But it's fun because there are leaves in that shadow weave. And there have been several people who've come up with various variations of it. So I think you can find it online if you really want to draft. Sometimes you want to analyze a fabric and you can't take it apart, and being able to see it is the real trick. And you do whatever it takes. A magnifying glass, good eyes, good young eyes will work sometimes too. What Robin did is she took some of the Chanel fabrics and put the microscope on those. And sometimes you'll find a store that'll let you do some of that. We went once with a second-year weaving class to look at the men's suits in one of the high-end department stores on a morning, so it wasn't very busy. Our professor talked to the fellow and told him what he was doing, and he started pulling out suits that he thought had interesting weaving patterns, that he thought the fabric was interesting. And it was fascinating. Men's suits can be really wonderful to look at, color and weave, and just really fun things they do with them that make them look very subtle. So it's really a fun thing to do, something like that, and go looking. And we all had our little pick glasses because the department had a bunch, and she brought them all, and we all got our little pick glasses to look at it that day. So that's why you might want to do it. Because let's go back to this complete draft.
I don't know if people can read in the recording, but Julie said that Handwoven Magazine issue 117 has Lord of the Ring patterns.
Oh, it
Saw
does,
that,
yeah. All right, this is Fiberworks. If you did an answer where you did one of these other answers, and I don't have the tie-up for it, let's look at the tie-ups. When you have a draft, the easiest way to analyze a draft. This is the shortcut that nobody teaches you, but becomes more obvious the more you know. And so that's why they don't teach it. You can look at the tie-up. If you have a draft that's in threading, tie-up, and treadling, you can analyze that draft from the tie-up. So what you're looking at is each shaft has its row, and each treadle has its column in the draft. So you look and you say, are any of these the same? Well, in this case, they're not. This is the minimum number of shafts and treadles you need to weave this draft. But if we did 5, 6, 7, 8, we would want the 5th thread here to act like a shaft 2.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make the 5th thread act like a shaft 2? By giving it the same row as the 2. So if we put a 5 on this on the 1st and 2nd and 4th treadle, then it's a shaft 2, even if it says it's a shaft 5. And so with the multiple shaft ones, you don't always have the fewest number of shafts and treadles. And so you can look and see, and sometimes you don't want the fewest number of treadles. In weaving rose path, when it's your first weaving project or something like that, which for my beginning class that was, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3, 2. Which one am I on? You know, I just did 1 and now I don't know where to go. Because I don't know if it's the one that's in between the 2 down rows or if it's the one that starts the up row. So just do a 5th treadle and stick it over there. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And they can do that and make almost no errors and have a much easier time than trying to keep track of which one they're on as they're working. So, and sometimes you'll find that that really is the easiest way to do it. So I shared some drafts on handweaving.net years ago. And when Chris asked for them, because I was involved in Complex Weavers, and he asked us if we'd put up some favorite drafts that we did. And so I put up my heart drafts, and everybody loved them. They've been really big hits over the years. They still are being woven a lot because they're hearts on 8 shafts, and they're pretty good. Well, one of them I did has 8 treadles, and the other one has 11 because my floor loom had 12. And I'm going, yeah, I'll do a straight draw, and then I can do it. That's easy. And I could do half with one foot and half with the other, and I'd be just as happy. So that's what I did. But it really only takes 8 treadles. It's just that I got tired of doing something like this and just made it a straight draw. And on this one, I could, if I wanted, I could do a 1 to 8 treadling. And then if I wanted, I could set it up for walking the treadles easily. And then work with 2 feet. So what you do with the treadling kind of depends upon how you want to weave it. And that's another good reason for learning to figure out how to analyze drafts, how to shaft shuffle and move them around, and make them what you really want to do. Because quite frankly, I don't like to, this one isn't as bad to thread as some of them. But I do much better threading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just better at it. And plus, if I thread that in a twill, and this is a twill, there are a lot of other things I can do on that twill set with a 1 to 8 draft than just this one draft. So now I have possibilities for borders. I have possibilities for a lot of fun things that I can try and mix up drafts. So the more shafts you have, the more you want to do those kinds of things to fiddle around and do more than one thing on a warp, because it takes time to warp it, and what you really want to do is weave and explore. So those are good reasons for learning draft analysis and fabric analysis. So that's what's on that is what's on the Google Drive, is that a PDF of that presentation. So, and then I've pulled up some BMPs, and let me go back to Fiberworks. One of the things then you can do in the Sketchpad in Fiberworks is let's go File, New Sketchpad. Let's open a Sketchpad. One of the things I've done over the years is played with the Atwater recipe book, because we're in the Atwater Weavers Guild, and we put it on. We changed it to, we did it all in WIF files when he no longer wanted to print it. There it is, Atwater recipe. We want them by files by type, and we want the BMP files. And let's pick this one to open. Let's make this big. So doing the designs that she just had in the book, they're kind of out there and drawn. Doing them charted makes it much easier to do the pickup work if you want, or to use them for a draw loom, or to do whatever you want with them. And so she had these pickup designs in double weave to do in the recipe book. So if you have a BMP of something, anything you want, which is a pixel by pixel format, you can bring it into the analysis, into the Sketchpad, and analyze it and decide what you want to do. And so now you can go through and change things. Let's make this, assuming we can get it big enough to see. You can say, well, you know, I really don't like this. It kind of looks like somebody's staring at me, and I'd like it better if it was symmetrical, or, yeah, well, but it is 3, isn't it? It's kind of like a snowflake. But these blocks, and you can say, well, maybe I want to change that block and put kind of looks like the state of Utah. Let's put where Mary Atwater lived. Did the last 10 years of her life. She kind of was in that area. And so you can change things from a sketch, and you can fiddle around with it, and you can take a picture of a child and do their outline and get enough detail on there that it looks like the child to you.
Now, is this only available in the silver or any of the?
This is only available in the silver.
Okay.
But if you have bronze, it doesn't really, it only costs you $5 more than it would have to buy the silver in the first place to upgrade. Pricing is reasonable. The other program you can work with is Weave Design. Now, Seth, you have a draw loom, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working with Weave Design, you can bring in a picture and put it behind the grid, and then you can decide how big or how small you want that grid to be to get the detail you want, and then you can draw over the picture.
I think I did that once with a silhouette of a few different animals that I was weaving into a twill pattern.
Yeah, that would work quite well. So all of the best tools aren't necessarily in the weaving software to do this kind of work. Photoshop and some of those have a lot of good tools for doing this that are actually a little easier than any of the software ones. So if you do it a lot, you end up going elsewhere to do it. I mean, let's be honest, the others don't do weaving drafts as well, but they do other things. And Excel will do a lot of things too. You just make square grids instead of what they are to start with, and have a lot of fun. If you want, you can even write equations for each row. But I don't know how much you want to get into it. So anyway, there's kind of the deciding things about it. So this week, this is very much interesting, except the basic, how do I do it when I have a grid? So now that we've finished that, any other questions you have?
Will this actually put it in from the grid? Will the software put it into draft format so that you have the shafts and the treadling? and the tie-up?
This was done in, what's it called? It was done in a cross-stitch program.
Mm.
And actually, if I were honest, I have a daughter who did most of them for me, including Madeline's dragon, which takes 128 shafts.
Wow.
And so she let us put that one in for the Complex Weavers Greatest Hits. We did that one. But in the Atwater book, she has this one, and then she has her weaving file open. Open a sketch pad. She has this one weaving. This one. This was the hardest one to do.
Mm.
In terms of just getting it all right, because she really didn't have it lined up quite the way it was, and you had to read it off. I don't know if you've seen the recipe book pages, but it isn't quite this good. She did a good sketch of it, but she didn't do it on grid paper. So, and I've seen the originals that she did for the book. They were lovely ink on a glassine type paper. And 50 years later, the ink is falling off the paper.
Mm.
So they're a problem, but fortunately we have it in other formats now. But this one will let you go. I don't know if we can do the whole thing on this one. But the problem with the program I was using is then it was $25 and now it's like $200. And I'm going, not ready to upgrade to spend that much. Because I'd only use it once or twice a year. I don't really want to spend that much on a program I don't use all the time. So you find that cross-stitch programs, if you can find a decent price on one. It was Hobbycraft or something. Oh, look, it's on the Atwater. It's on the Atwater recipe book. I've got the viewer for it. Now I should be able to find it.
I have Max Stitch if anyone ever needs any help.
You have what?
It's called Max Stitch or WinStitch. It's a very
Oh.
good program. I think it costs about $50, but you get lifetime upgrades, and it's actively worked on. So I'd recommend it if someone's looking
Can you
for
spell
it.
that?
It's just if you have a Mac computer, you would get MAC Stitch, and if you have a Windows computer, you would get Win WIN Stitch.
Okay, WinSketch.
Yeah.
Or Mac it.
Stitch. Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll have to
And
look at those.
Do those come with already some patterns already, or do you just, is it
Kind
just
of.
put in, or?
You put in mainly it's motifs and things. It will come with some motifs which can be useful, so there's hearts and things. I'm just looking at it right now. There are some hearts and birds and things, leaves that are nice simple designs that I'm just looking to see, I wonder if I could put any of that into a program. I do know some other people, when they're starting with simple things, they just use Excel. They make the squares in Excel and just do that. So
And put things together.
yeah.
Now there are a lot of good freeware or low-cost programs out there. The problem is finding the one that really works well. And
Exactly.
there's, I think it's paint.net that my son recommends for a paint program, for one of those to edit, chop off things and what you want and play with drafts. We used to use Paint Shop Pro, Paint Shop, which was a JASIC program, and then Corel bought it. And now it costs more than it ever did. And most of the things I want to do, actually, the older version does better than the newer versions, because they've
Mm.
got into photo editing and away from just drawing. And the things that I really want to do are not photo editing with Weaver things. They really are other things. So I quite often just I have both the newer version, a newer version. I don't have the newest, and an old version that I quite like. And I have both of them on mine, and so I can go back to the old version and play with drafts, because it had a really neat way, because I can't get the whole thing on the screen, but I want the whole draft. So I could put the two transparently over each other, get them exactly where they needed to be, and move it by just like one space at a time till I got them exactly matched, and then keep them. The new one will not let me do that.
Mm.
So if I want to put together parts of a draft that I can't get all on the screen in any resolution, then I go back to the old one. And I suppose I should learn PaintNet, but I already know this one. So, use what you have. But that's good. We'll try those. Maybe Kathy, would you to the group post those two programs
Yeah, I
and
can
just
do
say
that.
we talked about using
Yeah.
it.
So when you have the fabric analysis, I think I missed it. Will it create a drawdown when you look at it through the sketchpad, or how do you?
Yeah, if you can get, if you put something on the sketchpad,
Mm-hmm.
at the top of in Fiberworks, at the top, you have a choice to just count the shafts and treadles.
Mm.
If you want to stop there or edit some more. And then it will make a draft, and that's another choice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, it'll then put it into a draft format. If you're using something like ProWeave, that has the advantage of anything is just a grid, so you can analyze anything you want.
Mm. Okay.
One of the things that I've learned is if you take any part of, say, a 4-shaft drawdown,
Mm-hmm.
and use that as your tie-up, it will reduce whatever your threading is and treadling to a 4-shaft
Oh.
draft, because that's what the tie-up is. It goes back to using those rows and columns in the draft analysis. So if you have, like, one of the fun things you can do with is kind of make a circle in Overshot,
Okay.
and that's all on 4 shafts. So if you put that whole big thing in, like you have a 32 shaft straight draw threading, and you put that in as the tie-up, it will then reduce that, and it will give you a nice little bothersome thing. It'll give you a nice little drawdown, and you can then, but it still only takes 4 shafts. So if you come up
Okay.
with something you like, this is one of the things I did in network drafting, is then if this is on a network and you come up with something you like with this tie-up, that was just the drawdown from a 4-shaft draft, then it becomes, or an 8-shaft draft or a 16-shaft draft.
Mm.
So you can do what you want. So it's a very powerful thing for multi-shaft weavers too. And so you can think about your telescoped and digitized lines. Oh, that's not the one I want. You can telescope. No, maybe it is digitize them.
Okay.
You can play with different tie-ups, and those tie-ups you can, if you have a 24 by 24 square, you can fill it with 24 parts of a drawdown. And the nice place is to do that in ProWeave, because you can take that drawdown, cut it out, and put it in as the tie-up.
Wow. Okay.
So that's one of the fun things that people were doing with ProWeave. So that you could take anything. The other programs won't let you do that. Julie, you've come on and asked about fabric analysis. And they've told me that they can't get to the files on the February drive. So when I finish here, I'm going to go into my husband's computer and make sure all of them are shared and that you can see what I can see. And there's a presentation in there that goes through it step by step. That will let you see how to do it on any draft, any drawdown. And the one I used is one of Madeline Vanderhoot's, the cover for her book, Plaited Twill. And then the other one I did was a waffle weave, because a lot of them wanted to do waffle weave as a project. And they thought those fabrics were interesting, especially for baby blankets. These were a lot of 20-something-year-old young women who took the class. And a lot of them were at that point where even if they weren't getting married, their sisters or somebody in the family was, and they wanted a baby blanket. So that's what they wove. They had a lot of baby blankets wove, and a lot of just Afghans and throws, and then a little bit of everything over time. That's one of the reasons I got pretty good at drafting, is when you do 40 project plans or more a semester, and you have to know if they're right before you assign the loom and everything, you get better at drafting. And they've been over and they may want to do something that you haven't done before, so you have to figure out if they're right or not. So you learn a lot fast. Teaching is always a great way to learn.